So the South African Special Risk Association, or Insurance Association rather, or SASRIA, says it's already and fully capacitated to meet any obligations should there be any damages in the upcoming elections. The organization has called on all South Africans to vote responsibly and safely on the 29th of May. Well, we are joined now by SASRIA CEO Mr. Mpumi Tyikwe, joining us virtually. Mr. Tyikwe, good morning to you. Thank you so much for joining us. I think let's start off with the assessments that SASRIA has done, if at all, about potential risks to the upcoming elections.
Yes, we've been, good morning to you once more, Naledi, and good morning to the viewers. Really, as SASRIA, we've been monitoring the situation since November. Also, we've got benefit of claims that have happened in the past 6 democratic elections we've had in South Africa. As you know, they started out right back in 1994 up to, we've had more recently the municipal elections. So we've got a benefit of seeing what happened at that particular time, and we try and project to today. So, and we've been monitoring the situation since November last year.
Yeah.
And our assessment is that largely, the elections would be free and fair. The IEC has got the capacity, the capability, as they've demonstrated in the past, to run an election that would be acceptable to most South Africans. And more importantly, we also have got confidence in the South African public that most South Africans love their democracy, they are peaceful, they are law-abiding. And even if you reflect back to July 2021, the communities played a significant role in making sure that those protests come to an end and the damages that were incurred are minimized.
Yeah, it's interesting that you touch on July 2021, and I think that was such a pivotal moment, not just for the country, but certainly for SASRIA. What are the lessons that you take out of that, and how is it that SASRIA as a business really has strengthened its own management strategies?
Yes, what we learned is the role the security cluster should play when we are experiencing something like that. So the first thing that we noticed in July 2021 was the response times that we experienced from the security system. I think if you cast back again, we had more recently, taxi strikes and also truck violence involving trucks. And you can see there that our security system is willing and ready to respond and deal with that situation. So that's the first part. The second part is, again, I'm going to emphasize the role that the community plays in such situations. As SASRIA, in the last year, we have seen a decline in the number of claims. As much as the protests have remained consistently high, the damage to infrastructure has been lower. South Africans, I think, are hitting the call that as much as it is your democratic right to protest, you, as a South African, has also got a responsibility not to destroy infrastructure or property, or even worse, this situation must not lead to a loss of life. Yeah,
but certainly for SASRIA coming out of the July 2021 riots, you had, the amount of claims was, some would argue, overwhelming and could very well have brought SASRIA to its knees. I believe that some and not all of claims related to 2021 have been paid out. So essentially, I'm asking, where are we in terms of settling all of those payouts from July 2021, and then talk to me about the financial health of SASRIA?
Yes. So basically, if we go back to July 2021, we've settled 99.9% of those claims. They amounted to 31.5 billion rand. And what we saw during those claims, if you were to look at the graph, a daily graph of those claims, if the security system had responded much earlier, that 31.5 billion rand would be in the order of about 12 billion rand. So it played a significant role in the total number of claims. Insofar as the financial stability of SASRIA at the moment is that we are definitely, from a financial matrix point of view, we are much more better prepared than we were financially compared to July 2021. Currently, we are sitting with reserves just in excess of 13 billion rand. Unfortunately, because of the claims we experienced in July 2021, we've had to increase the premiums to our clients. those premiums over the last 3 years have doubled up. So we are twice the size that we were before July 2021. We have struggled to place reinsurance. And I think it's important to remind South Africans that these things come at a cost to them as well. Globally, what the London markets have seen in South Africa, when we make statements that instigate violence, basically they take a negative view and they charge SASRIA even higher premiums for the reinsurance that we buy. So we've struggled with the reinsurance a little bit, but even as late as yesterday, we managed to get some reinsurers on board. So currently we're sitting at 62% coverage of what we would have wanted. But I do believe, and we do believe, that should there be any claims during this period, those claims would be minimized because of the state of readiness of not just the security system, but also that South Africans would like to see that they have a peaceful vote.
But do you prepare your coffers in, I suppose, SASRIA's pockets for potential damage? I mean, where we know that law enforcement has already identified hotspots in various parts of the country, particularly some of the hotspot areas in KZN and Gauteng, where they are seeing possible worry there. Law enforcement saying they're keeping a close eye on it. But how do you prepare the organization financially for that?
Yes, generally, we get in insurance terms, our business is what we call low frequency, high severity claims. In simple terms, what that means is this. During the good years, we build up reserves. So if you were to go back, SASRIA was formed in 1979. It took 42 years for it to have a significant claim like we had in July 2021. So if you look at the previous years, the highest claim that we had received during that period was about 500 million rands. So as you correctly said, Naledi, the 31.5 billion was overwhelming. If you compare it, that the biggest claim we had received before was 500 million rands. So during the good years, just like, the story in the Bible, 7 years of plenty and 7 years of famine. So during the 7 years of plenty, you keep your reserves, you invest the money prudently, and when you have a big claim, you will have enough to pay them. The sad thing now is that, as you know, July 2021 was only 3 years ago.
Yeah.
So we haven't had the space to accumulate as much reserves as we would like, but we are still, though, in a far much more better position than we were in July 2021.
Yeah.
What I must add, during July 2021, the South African government had to pay or inject into SASRIA 22 billion rand. But you should compare that 22 billion rand to the dividend and taxes that SASRIA had paid to the state of about 16.5 billion rands in 2011. So basically, you get this sort of a scenario. Yes, we'll pay taxes, we'll pay dividends to the state. And during a bad year, should we experience something larger than what we expect, the state will bail us out. That is not where we want to go. I think if we can have, some space over the next 5 to 6 years, SASRIA is targeting to build reserves of over 30 billion rand. And if we get there and South Africans protest but do that responsibly, we will be able to meet whatever challenges that we experience beyond those 6 years.
Yeah, I mean, that's quite the target when you've just paid 31 billion rand as a result of the July 2021 riots. So I'm worried perhaps about that mathematics. But if you will, talk to me about where the blind spots are that you feel that law enforcement really needs to be looking at. I mean, we've got, 650 voting stations that they've identified as hotspots. But then when you look at the news coming out of the Eastern Cape, for instance, just yesterday, the taxi war taking place, and then, of course, the blocking of roads and trucks in the Eastern Cape. Those are areas certainly that aren't, included in what happens with voting stations, but areas of concern nonetheless, right?
Yes, yeah. Look, you can have a scenario or a situation like we experienced, for instance, in 2019. In 2019, around the election period, our losses were very, very small, hence the confidence. However, we ended up having, those xenophobic attacks, which ended up escalating. And SASRIA that year experienced a loss ratio of 62%, which you need to compare with the loss ratio on average of 35% that we have in a good year. So there are some of these socio-economic challenges that you are faced with. And for instance, you've seen in certain places in the Val where people were saying we're not going to vote because we haven't had electricity since 2020 and so on. So you could have a situation where South Africans will use this opportunity to protest so that they can have other issues that they are faced with a challenge. So we will have in certain areas that happening, but generally, if you consider that we've got about 27.8 million South Africans registered to vote, at least around 60% of those South Africans will go out. And in the main, we will have a largely free and fair elections that would be acceptable. But we need to continue monitoring it. So what has really happened as well post-July 2021, there is a lot of intelligence that is being gathered, in a legal manner by various private sector companies.
Right.
For instance, you have seen in the last week, the FirstRand Group coming out with a statement that, this is the likely scenario. This is where we are seeing shortcomings and so on. So we are getting all that intelligence from various private sector companies, and that is being passed on to the police. All
right. Well, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for speaking to us. We really do appreciate it. That there is the CEO for the South African Special Risk Insurance Association, or SASRIA, Mpumi Tyikwe, essentially saying that SASRIA does believe that the 2024 national general elections will be free, fair and stable.